Shalom Chaverim. Today, a Torah portion of Vayakhel-Pekudei, and we're going to do it together with Yosef Haim Brenner, Yud Brenner, which you can see here. This is actually a copy of his biography that was written by Anita Shapira. Excellent biography. It's in Hebrew, but I'm sure it's also translated. Also, if after this you're interested in Brenner, Mr. Hollander has many Brenner books here at their Nister that you can come and browse or buy. Okay, so is there such thing as Jewish existentialism? Can we even make up a term such as Jewish existentialism or call anyone an existentialist Jew? And so in my mind, the answer is yes. And the more accurate answer is Yosef Haim Brenner. Now we'll explain. About half a century before Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus would become synonymous with existentialist philosophy and literature and theater, there was a guy, Brenner, who really, through some groundbreaking work of literature and philosophy, really tapped into this existentialist genre, but he did it out of the circumstances of being Jewish. And the reason I wanted to bring Brenner today is because what our portion, and I'm now talking about Vayakhel, does is really an incredible existentialist move. Basically, a transfer of power from God to people. And the first three verses of the portion deal with the Shabbat. So it's almost as if the portion begins on the seventh day. And then the week of creation begins. The week of creation begins that after God puts a boundary, the boundary of sacredness of the Shabbat, it then gives the starting point for people to begin creating, with the responsibility being on them. And for those of you who, just hear me talking and saying existentialism and existentialist, and you're wondering to yourself, what does it even mean? So I just want to take a really quick clarification that existentialism basically, and I'm borrowing here from Sartre's definition of it, is that that basically existence precedes essence. Okay, so this is what existentialism. Now, what is existence precedes essence? It means that when we are thrown into existence, there is no set meaning or goal for us. There is not something that surrounds reality that we need to fulfill. We are thrown completely alone, and it is up to us to create that meaning. It is up to us to define what our reality would be. Okay, so this is really, in a couple lines, the basic idea of existentialism. And what our portion does is really God just moves the responsibility to people. And I want to give you some examples from the portion that of words that repeat and keep repeating themselves, such as nediv libo, which means someone who's generous, generosity, or chacham lev, wisdom, or even what we would call streetwise, right? People who can manage. Nadva rucho, a kind spirit. בחוכמה, בתבונה, בדעת ובכל מלאכה, wisdom, knowledge, artistry, craftsmanship, ולחשוב מחשבות, thoughtfulness, and so on. So all of these words repeat and repeat and repeat. And what it does is it really gives people not only the ability, but the quality, the talent, the thoughtfulness. It all describes human traits that are essential to create. And so men and women, and by the way, this is one of the portion where in the language it talks about v'chol ish v'chol isha. It talks about men and women. It's really, really moving and astounding. The name of the portion, Vayakhel, is basically, it's the gathering. It's the gathering of people in order to create. And it's not just that now people have the responsibility, but they are almost entrusted in creating something that is also aesthetic, is also beautiful, is also full of thoughts. And this is what all of these expressions mean to say. And I think it's really fascinating that it's in polar opposite to the Promethean myth that of creation. But what is the myth of Prometheus? Is that about human steals the fire, steals independence and knowledge and craftsmanship from the gods, and then being punished for it, right? If I remember correctly, it's having put something on a hill with birds peck and on his liver every day, and the liver grows again every morning, right? Like the most terrible punishment. For what? From acquiring the tool for human independence. The Jewish myth is exactly opposite. God gives that fire to the people, and tell them, go ahead and create. And I'm trusting your talents and your inner abilities to do so. And for those of you, and I know we spoke about it in these videos a lot, that the Judaism that we all practice today is actually a human interpretation of the Torah. So basically, our sages of the Talmud already determined really clearly that it's in human hands to interpret the law. And this is what we practice today in different levels of observance. And we all not always agree on these levels of observance, but we all follow a human interpretation of law. So we still take responsibility on adhering to the law, on the creation of everything around us, which is very important to remember. And how far can we interpret the law? This is still what divides us today. And Brenner, more than anyone really else, other than Berdichevsky, maybe, it really embodies what we could call Jewish secularism, or what he would call the new Jew. And I want to give you a little bit of background about him. So he was born in 1881 in what today is Ukraine. And he was born to a poor family and in a small town that was led by actually a Hasidic rabbi. His family was more of a Litvak, so more mitnagdim, but the rabbi of the town was a Hasidic rabbi, and this is the yeshiva that he went to. Needless to say, he wasn't really happy with the yeshiva. He was kicked out of the yeshiva because he also was caught reading external texts. And so he started to get more and more distance from religious observance, but needless to say that his upbringing really informed him in Jewish text and tradition. So he already possessed a really wide knowledge of Jewish tradition when he became secular. And not only he became secular, he joined the Bund. He was a socialist, and then during the Russia-Japan war, he was forcefully drafted to the Russian army, and he didn't like it, and so he escaped. He escaped, and then he got caught, and he was put in prison, and it was Bund members who actually, in some heroic operation, managed to kidnap him and rescue him from that prison and smuggle him to London. And in London, he really starts to form his body of work as a writer. And not only works of literature, but also publications. And he started a periodical in Hebrew that he wrote, edited, and published himself. And he actually wrote in that periodical under many different names of writers that are all him. And it was called HaMe'orer, or The Awakener. And I chose one text out of HaMeorer to bring to you today because this text, and I promise you we will study it more together, this text is really, really canonized in Israel as a text that it's almost studied in a Talmudic fashion because it's so rich and so fantastic. And I chose to bring it today not only because it's really the definition of what we can call Jewish existentialism, or in other words, the Jewish responsibility on creation. And it's also because it really finds holiness in a secular way of life. And I think it's also a much needed wake-up call to a Jewish community that inverts towards its own self, and that is so immersed in fear that it neglects to remember the power that it has to create. And I just gonna let those words speak for themselves. I just wanted to say I'm going to read it in English because of the length of the text. I'm not going to read the Hebrew version of it, but it is worth studying in Hebrew because of the so many references to Tehillim, to Torah, to really just Jewish traditional texts that come out of it. But even, and this is the beauty of Brenner, that even without getting those references, it's still very inspiring and very powerful. Here we go. On this day, when ignorance governs the shrines, and the words of Torah have diminished, and like the blind we grope in darkness, and skepticism eats up heart and soul, and black bitterness pours out of everything, and sadness increases, and the pillars fall, and faith in heaven on earth collapses, and the lonely ones, the abstinents, wander to seek God, and they will not find it. On this day, behold, I come to you, a brother in need. And not to presume before you on the paved paths, not to be puffed up with my fixed dogmas, not to your command, this is one and the only path, tread it and you will find rest. For you will know no rest with me, brother, nor peace, nor pleasure. For I come to awaken you, brother, to awaken you to say, ask, Son of Man, for the paths of the world, ask, where is the way? Where? I come to awaken you and to elevate your thoughts, to elevate it and expand it and strengthen it so that you will not be lost in its difficult searches. And thus it will be said, hear, Son of Israel, hear, son of sorrow, lift up your head, lift up your head, and the gates of the world will be lifted. No rest, no self-deception, be whatever you may be. Do not fear any consequences, whatever they may be. No trace of falsehood and tenderness of heart. Away, clouds, come out of the cavern of the rock. Remove the godly palm from you. Reach even to the mist, ascend to the grove, see the face of being, attain its essence, its glory, sanctify yourself. Shabbat Shalom.